of his inner life, who he is. That's one of the greatest signs of his love, that he wants us to know him in his inner mystery. Because we desire to communicate who we are with the ones we love. And so the Father desires to communicate all that he is. And he's done that in the Son, and he gives the Son to us. Now this is all very profound and beautiful. Pope Francis, as he usually does, sums it up quite beautifully and succinctly when he says that Jesus Christ is the face of the Father's mercy. That when we see Jesus, we see the Father's mercy. When we look at the word mercy, though, and the concept of mercy, oftentimes there can be some kind of misconception. I know even for myself, when we started the year of mercy, I was thinking, okay, how would I define mercy? And I found that I had kind of a difficult time doing that. And so I just want to take a pause here. We say that Jesus is the face of the Father's mercy. But before we kind of delve into the life of Christ and how he manifests that mercy, I just want to take a step back and look at just the actual word mercy and what that means, the definition. The word mercy comes from two Latin words. Put together, it's misericordiae, or even in Spanish, misericordia, right? It's basically two words put together. Cor, meaning heart, and misere, meaning misery or lack. And so just taken literally, misericordia means a heart that seeks misery, that seeks the misery of another, a heart that is moved with compassion and seeks to alleviate the misery of another. If we want to have a longer definition, because again, English teacher, I like definitions, we can say it like this. Mercy means noticing the misery of another, allowing it to stir our hearts such that we're moved with compassion to assist another. So you can kind of, if it helps, think of that as a threefold movement, right? First is noticing the misery of another. It's having eyes to see. It's being present to another such that we even notice their misery. But then it's more than that. It's allowing that to stir our hearts, to move something within us, such that we move to assist. It takes action. And so when we think of the Father's mercy towards us, and I love this picture here of the Sacred Heart, of Jesus handing his Sacred Heart, because it's quite literally that his heart is moved with pity for us. That the Father's heart, you could say, the center of who he is moved with pity at the sight of his suffering children, such that he comes to alleviate that suffering. So let's take this definition and see if we can apply it to what we learned earlier, that Jesus is the face of the Father's mercy. Now, obviously, Jesus, in what he did, is the most essential thing. I've heard a quote that said, Jesus never said he loved us, he only showed us. And so by his actions, particularly his passion, death, and resurrection, he manifests God's mercy in the most profound way. But he also knew that people needed to hear it taught. We need to hear words, we need to understand. And so he would often tell parables. And there are several parables that really show forth his mercy, but there's one in particular I wanted to look at. And it's one we're all very familiar with. But I'm just going to read it aloud, and if you'd like, you can look at the painting, or you can close your eyes and just kind of see if we can sort of hear it anew, even, with this understanding of what mercy is. Because he wished to justify himself, the man said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instructions, "Take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back." Which of these 3, in your opinion, was neighbor to the robber's victim? He answered, "The one who treated him with mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Does this sound like it has the essence of what we're talking about, that definition of mercy? This noticing the misery of another, allowing one's heart to be moved such that there's movement to alleviate the suffering. The priest, the religious leaders of the time, and the Levite, this man's countryman, his true neighbor, they both noticed, right? They saw him, but they moved to the other side. They didn't allow their hearts to be moved with compassion. The Samaritan, however, was a foreigner to this man. He technically wasn't a neighbor. And yet he allowed that threefold movement to take place. He noticed, his heart was moved with compassion, and he did something about it. Pope Emeritus Benedict, he talked about the parable of the Good Samaritan, and especially drew out that word compassion. He has a beautiful quote. He says that for the Samaritan, his heart is wrenched open. The gospel uses the word that in Hebrew had originally referred to the mother's womb and maternal care. Seeing this man in such a state strikes him viscerally, touching his soul. He had compassion. That's how we translate the text today, diminishing its original vitality. Struck in his soul by the lightning flash of mercy, he himself now becomes a neighbor, heedless of any question or danger. That's mercy. Not just seeing and sort of, pitying, a visceral reaction. That the heart is moved with pity such that it's moved to action. And Pope Benedict points out that the fathers of the church, so those are the ones that in the first centuries of the church were really laying the foundation of how we would understand the revelation of Jesus Christ. The fathers of the church saw in this parable an allegory or an image of the incarnation, of Jesus Christ, the second person of the Most Holy Trinity, becoming man. He said that the man beaten is a symbol of Adam, or of fallen man, man in the state after original sin. That we were, as a result of our own sin of turning away from God, in a horrible state, beaten and left on the side of the road. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho represents human history, particularly how every culture, every religion tries to save themselves in a sense, tries to make up for that lack on their own, tries to heal themselves and can't. That's pretty much what the whole Old Testament teaches us, is that we can't do it on our own. We can't heal ourselves. The Samaritan, the foreigner, is an image of Jesus Christ, God made man. Because the Samaritan was totally other from the man, just as God is totally other. And yet seeing the plight that humanity was in, instead of going to the other side, comes down to meet his creatures, to heal them, to bind their wounds. Even the use of the wine and the oil, that's symbolic of the sacraments of the church, right? Eucharist, baptism, where we use chrism, confirmation, confession, these healing sacraments of the church. And then finally, the inn, where they bring the man, is a symbol of the church itself, who cares for its children and continues to heal the wounds that they have. And so all of this is an image of this great act of mercy, that the Father, seeing our state, had compassion and came to meet us in the person of Jesus Christ. I think sometimes growing up, I don't know if y'all are cradle Catholics or where you are in your journey, but it's just so familiar, right, the stories. But when we just stop for a moment and think that God took on flesh, all the miseries, all the suffering that come with even just the body, that he took them on when he didn't at all have to. He gained nothing by it. But that's who he is. His heart is mercy. And so, just to kind of give you an overarching view of where we're going tonight for the remaining few minutes, we see the face of the Father's mercy in Jesus Christ, especially in the incarnation. But we also talked about this reality of pilgrimage, right? This pilgrimage of faith that we're all on. And so how is it that the incarnation, which took place at a certain moment in history, is applied to our lives, is applied to our pilgrimage? Because yes, it did occur 2,000 years ago, but that same mercy is accessible to each one of us. Remember when Jesus said, when he was just getting ready to ascend to heaven, and they're like, "You're going to restore the kingdom now?" And he's like, "It's better for you if